This is Robin Thicke, and you know I got soul.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out to do this interview with us. We're big supporters.
Thank you so much, man.
I want to just get right into it because we don't have a lot of time. So the new album On Heaven and in Earth, man, we got a chance to hear it from your publicist. Amazing, amazing project. I mean, to be honest, you gave us everything we were missing in R&B music. I mean, we were talking about creative production, live instruments, you know, heartfelt lyrics, vocals. I mean, this is everything we want in an R&B album, and we love it. So tell us about what went into the creation of it.
Oh, Tom, it's been a long, 7 years between albums, and my last album was 2014. And since then, there's been so many ups and downs. But this last year, when COVID hit, right after COVID hit, my beloved manager and mentor, Andre Harrell, who had been there with me since my very first album, every video, every album, everything, every choice I made, he was my best friend and greatest influence. And when I lost him, I really took a long look in the mirror at who I was and what kind of a man I wanted to be, what kind of an artist I wanted to be. And he gave me so much. He gave me so much life. He gave me so much information. He gave me so much support that I felt I owed it to him to finish the album and to make the very best music I could, because I owed it to him,
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Robin, it's crazy because back in 2015 when you dropped Morning Sun, we put that as our #1 song of 2015 for our personal chart. That was such an amazing song. Took you a couple of years before you came back out. Just take me through that journey from going to a major system, now doing it on your own. Like, just take me through that whole process.
Well, there's the goods and the bads. I'm very excited to own my own masters. You know what I mean? And after doing 7 years with the major label, Jimmy Iovine had moved on from Interscope Records, and it was a new vibe, and I was part of the old world, and there's all this new energy that comes in, and they all want to make their acts happen, and so sometimes the older acts get a little pushed to the side, but for me that's okay, because I was always supposed to make my own music anyway. I was never really a part of the machine, Right. Once I got a little taste of that pop fame, I kind of chased it a little bit, by working with all the best producers. But then, recently I really settled into what, the kind of music that I want to leave behind. Now that I have children and I've lost my father and I've lost my mentor, it's more important to me about what kind of music I leave behind than it is, staying hot, you know what I mean? Or staying current in any way. I just want to make music that I'll be proud of when I leave this earth.
Love to hear that. It's amazing. It's been such a long time since your last album. I think almost 7 years. We had been used to hearing you put out an album, every few years.
Yeah.
So what was and we know you've been through a whole lot in life. I mean, what was the journey like getting back to, putting out an album? Because you had put out singles here and there, some great songs, like you'd mentioned Morning Sun, but what was it like getting to this point?
Well, I think it's just, after you've done it so many times, there's a sense of you're trying to top yourself, or you're trying to reinvent yourself, or you're trying to be a better version of yourself. And then you realize that you're spending too much time in your head, and you're not doing the one thing that, you set out to do, which is give people your music. I'm sitting here and I'm holding on to it all, and I'm not finishing it, and I'm second guessing it. And the reason I started music is because I wanted people to hear it. And here I am, and nobody's hearing it.
Yeah.
So I just kind of had to get over myself, and I had to commit. I hadn't fully committed to finishing the project. And my last piece of advice from Andre Harrell, from my mentor before he passed, I had played him the album as it was about a week before he passed, and he pretty much told me, this isn't good enough. This isn't a hit album. He said, where's all the strings and the flutes?
Wow.
And where's all your vocal arrangements? Where's all that Robin Thicke stuff,
Yep.
And then he passed away, and then I did everything I could to give him the album he wanted.
Amazing. Robin, something you touched on earlier, after the success of Blurred Lines, you started chasing a little bit of that pop success.
Yeah.
I remember that record you had with Nicki, the record with Juicy J, and at that same time you were putting out songs like Morning Sun, but I know you pride yourself on being a true musician, true songwriter. So those poppier records that were more commercially friendly, does that feed you creatively as an artist?
Well, I think it was something that I wanted more fame. I wanted more heat. I wanted more, you get a taste of that, but that was never anything I sought for when I was a young artist. It was all about the music. And then it became about, well, I want the music, but I also want the fame, And that's where I started to lose myself a little bit. And then I lost the music a little bit. And it took years for me to get the confidence back and also just to devote myself to making the best music instead of trying to be a star again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because Tom and Robin, I got to tell you, your biggest hits, Blurred Lines, Lost Without You, those are hits that no one expected to be hits. They were just super organic. So, I mean, I think that's the recipe for success.
Yeah, I realized that both of those songs were not written with the charts in mind. The Lost Without You, I just opened my mouth and saying how I was feeling that day, and that honest feeling came out. And with Blurred Lines, Pharrell and I were just dancing in the studio. We just wanted to make people dance and make people smile, and we got lucky, So,
as a 17-year-old, I think it was songwriting for artists like Brandy, linking up with Brian McKnight. I mean, and then writing with him. I mean, when we were 16, 17, I don't even know what we were doing. I mean, so it's hard to imagine, but you don't get credit. I think some of your biggest hits maybe overshadow that a bit, but I guess take us back to those moments of a young Robin Thicke being in that moment. What was it even like?
Oh man, I was so hungry. I was writing a song a day. I was ditching school early at lunchtime, skipping 7th period to get to the studio and watch Brian McKnight do vocal arrangements. I mean, being able to be in the studio I was 15, I think 15 years old, and I'm recording with Brian McKnight after he had just made one of the great R&B albums for that generation. And I'm watching him do these vocal arrangements, and I had already been a student of Take 6, and he was the youngest brother. So I had really learned all of my vocal chops and was learning my vocal chops from Take 6 as a 13 and 14-year-old. And then I fall into Brian McKnight's lap, and this guy is helping me with my first album. That album ended up getting shelved, by the way. I was 16 years old, and I wrote this album. Half of it I wrote with Brian, and half of it I wrote with other producers. And that album ended up getting shelved, and I went back to writing and producing for other people for a few years. And then when I was about 21, I started to devote all my time to my own music. And about a year later, I met Andre Harrell, and the rest was history. He's the one who really saw the artist in me, the performer, the star. I just saw the songwriter in me. He saw the star.
Wow. Tom, I was talking to you before Robin got on the call. He's written some of my favorite album cuts, the Maya record, Tears on My Pillow, the Jordan Knight record, the 98 Degrees record, Don't Stop the Love. I love that song, man.
I was so lucky. For some reason, I ended up being on, I'd have an album cut on the biggest album of that artist's career. Every album that I was on, Christina, Usher, Confessions, Mark Anthony's album, 90 Degrees. I was on all of their biggest sellers. I was the luckiest guy in the world. Never had the single. But always had the plaque on the wall for being on a lucky project.
Robin, I gotta ask though, because you saw yourself as a writer, Andre Harrell saw you as a star. Can you imagine an alternate universe where you just stuck to being a songwriter throughout your career?
No, because I knew that. I mean, I just kind of was taking my time. I wanted to have a voice before I went up on the big stage. You know what I mean? And so I realized when I had the album shelved that I was just copying Brian McKnight, and that's why it got shelved. I hadn't found my own voice. I was just Brian McWhite. But then because I was only 14, 15, so I hadn't found my own voice yet. But by the time I was 21, I started writing the songs that became the A Beautiful World album. And that is very individual, that album. You know, it's very to the left and on its own. My favorite compliment of that album, I'm going to name drop one real quick. My favorite compliment was Bruno Mars. When I first met Bruno, he told me what a huge fan he was of the A Beautiful World album and how that helped also influence his first album, which was very, because I remember, because I told him, I said, I listened to that album and I heard a little bit of that, because he tried very genuinely to go all the way into musical directions. If it was rock, he went all the way. If it was pop, he went all the way. If it was soul, he went all the way. And that's you know, what I did with that first album. I went all the way into those styles, you know.
Wow.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear these stories, because in a day and age of where we have basically overnight successes, you know, artists blowing up out of nowhere, to hear your story, you know, behind the scenes, you were grinding for so many years, even when A Beautiful World didn't do what you hoped it had done. And then eventually, you know, the evolution of Robin Thicke came out. I mean, could you even look back and think about how long you were grinding to become a star? I mean, how do you look back at that period?
Well, man, you know, some of it feels very distant. Some of it feels very fresh. I think I have learned that my failures and my toughest times have brought out the best in me, you know. And evolution, after The Beautiful World failed and I had to look in the mirror and I had to strip it all down and figure out what was I doing this for and who was I as a human being, and that's what the evolution is all about. You know, I became a better person during that period, and I became a better artist too. Then I got caught up in some of the BS, you know, that the cliches that we tend to get caught up in. And then these last few years of losing my father, losing my house, my mentor, and also having 3 new children, and the love and the joy that I get daily from them, everything has changed, you know. And yet I still feel as hungry to make great music as I ever was before. You know, I'm not as hungry to go on tour necessarily and be away from my family, but I haven't lost any hunger to make a song that's as good as any song I've ever made or better, you know?
That's amazing.
Mind touching a bit on the time you were signed to Star Trek, because we look at that era and just, you were so admirable of what the Neptunes and Pharrell and the crew, what they achieved. And when they brought you in, it really helped cultivate things further for you.
Yeah, that was Jimmy Iovine. You know, Jimmy Iovine was a genius at putting 2 talents together to make an explosion, you know, whether it was putting Eminem with Dr. Dre or putting 50 Cent with Eminem and Dre. Like he saw something big coming and he would go, if I put you with this is going to be something. And Pharrell took me under his wing. He helped promote me during the Wanna Love You Girl time. He was in the video. He did the, you know what I mean? And he co-signed me. That made everybody look a little closer. And then Lost Without You dropped. And then we had our own place, you know? Right.
Was there ever a point in time where you, Pharrell, and Chad were going to do like a Neptunes Robin Thicke album? Because that's what I thought when you signed to Star Trek. You guys have great songs together, like Blurred Lines, the one off the new album. And then an unreleased cut, Another Life, that's on YouTube. I love that song. But was there ever a point where you guys were going to do something together?
Well, we just always were jamming together, you know? I think once I kind of left the system and the scene for the last 5 or 6 years, you know, because I really wanted to rediscover my purpose, you know, and rediscover my music without trying to please people that I might never please, you know. And I just decided to look inside and call my band and work with my guys and just push it as far as I could. But let me tell you, working with Pharrell and working with Chad is equally as inspiring and awesome as it is being around a vocalist like Brian McKnight. I mean, or Mary J. Blige. You really learn from these people just from their commitment to who they are and making something great for people, putting it all into the record for people. They're so devoted.
So, and to finish up the interview, I want to take it back to the new album. You know, you have this song on there, Out of My Mind. You know, and in the copy of the album we provided, it had, you know, some liner notes or, you know, kind of your description of the song. So deep. I mean, it touches on deep topics. It obviously means a lot to you. A song like that, you know, how do you pour yourself into that? How do you create something that means so much and hits so deep?
Well, the song is a little more on the lighthearted side.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Of it's when the coin flips, you know. It's like
right.
it's you're dealing with your depression, you're dealing with loss, you're dealing with addiction, you're dealing with all of the routines that have gotten you into a place that you know you don't want to live in. And then all of a sudden, with some work and some faith and some love, all of a sudden you find some peace, you know, you find some serenity, and that way you're okay. You know, you're a little out of your mind. You know, you're a little crazy,
yeah,
but you find peace with it, you know. And I think that's what we're all searching for. We're searching for as much peace throughout this madness that we can find, you know.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
And then this is your first album as an independent artist. You know, how did the approach change? I mean, do you feel more pressure at all?
Well, there's less money.
yeah.
But, you know, I think I'm just at a different place. Luckily, you know, I've accomplished, you know, some check marks that I wanted to, you know.
Yeah.
I've traveled the world. I've been very lucky, very blessed. And now I have a beautiful family that is my first priority. And my music is now my second priority. And yet, I know that if I just keep staying on the path that I'm on, and that's fully devoted to my family and my music, that good things will come. And I don't have to really worry about the ins and outs, because by the end of it, there'll be a whole bunch of Robin Thicke songs.
Right.
And hopefully there's some good ones in there. That's how I think of it.
Right.
I can't worry about the rest now.
Right. Like, Robin, when I listened to this new album, what I took away was it was Robin Thicke, classic Robin Thicke, and you've always stayed true to your core, which is super important. I don't know if a lot of artists understand that these days. Like, what was the importance to you to sticking to your core throughout your career?
Well, you know, I've always wanted to be different.
Yep.
That was one of the first things I set out to be, was I want to make sure that my music doesn't sound like anybody else, you know? And then, of course, what did I start doing? Sounding like like everybody else for a few songs. And I worked with the same producers everyone works with, and this and that. And then I realized I was chasing something that didn't make me happy in the first place.
Yeah.
So what makes me happy is making music that I know came from here, and I can stand tall and be happy with that, you know?
Right.
Wow.
It's kind of crazy, because when we think about your career, obviously everyone knows Blurred Lines. That immediately comes to mind because it was a huge hit. But we recently revisited your discography. Man, you've given us such an epic catalog of music, timeless music. I mean, you're among the greats of your generation. I mean, I don't know how you view your own legacy, but do you realize, you know, what you've given music fans and music lovers?
Well, I don't think of it that way, but I do think of the whole thing, you know, as one thing. Like when you click onto Stevie Wonder's catalog, or John Lennon, or whoever it is, it doesn't matter what year the song came out. It doesn't matter. It's the feeling comes right out of the speakers, and that's what you get from that artist. They gave it to you, you know. And so for me, once the whole thing is done, I just want to make sure that I gave the world as much of me and as much of my music as possible.
Love it.
Wow.
And then we're just about out of time. One last thing I wanted to ask you. We've always loved this song you did. It was supposed to be for Michael Jackson, Fall Again. Our friend Glenn Lewis eventually recorded it. We love that version too. But I guess, just what do you remember about making that song?
You know what? There's a great story there. I happened to be, at the time, I was writing with Walter Afanasieff, who was Mariah Carey's main writing partner for her first 4 albums. And also he did My Heart Will Go On for Celine Dion, one of the great writer producers of the generation. And I was, you know, maybe 19 years old or 20 years old. And so the day that Ricky Martin did the Grammys and exploded, right? When he did Cup of Life, and he, you know, and he's shaking his bonbon, and the whole world went nuts. So that night, Madonna calls Tommy Mottola and says, tells Tommy Mottola, I want to do a duet with Ricky Martin. So they call Walter Afanasieff, do you have a song for Ricky Martin? We happen to have just have started this song. So we finished it the next day, the day after the Grammys. We finished the song, we sent it to Tommy Mottola, Tommy hears it and says, "Forget Madonna and Ricky Martin. I'm playing this for Michael Jackson." Michael Jackson loves the record. I get a call the next day. Michael Jackson wants to do the song. Tommy's flying me out to New York to write for Celine. And I ended up spending 10 days, working for Tommy Mottola, writing some songs with a few, and a few of them ended up on certain projects that he had. But that was my first kind of like thrust into the big names and the stratosphere of that. That was the first time I remember I wasn't allowed in the room with Michael while he was recording.
Oh, wow.
I was next door on the wall, literally on the studio wall next door while he was in there recording, but that was pretty cool.
Wow.
Love that story. And then we're out of time, Robin. I want to thank you. Before we get out of here, anything you want to add?
Oh, just to say thank you for the support throughout the years, and I'm so grateful that you like the new music.
Yeah.
And just to everybody stay safe out there, and lots of love, and God bless everyone.